Good morning again, everyone. Thank you for being here. Happy New Year. For how many of you is this your first time to Jikoji? Well, thank you for being with us, and thank you to all of you who came back. It's wonderful to be together. I hope you heard the creek running this morning into the city. The world is pretty alive here. I don't really feel I need to introduce him. We just introduced him. But I want you all to join me in welcoming Joe and Koshu and his first talk as Shuso for our winter practice period. We're very, very appreciative of his taking responsibility for the Sangha, for the example that he will set of his vow and our collective agreement to wake up together.
Feels pretty lucky to be here. I think it probably is pretty lucky to. It's always pretty lucky to be here. But I always love taking the opportunity to just appreciate this moment. This is a unique moment.
Message. It says,
oh,
start AI companion when recording. Do you want the AI companion?
We do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, great. Okay.
All right. We have we have an AI companion. Welcome, AI. Or I may not. Yeah, I wanted to talk a little bit today about what to me is a really tender relationship between precepts, which we take as Buddhists, and samadhi. There are 5 basic precepts that, as far as I know, are consistent across all of Buddhism. And the fundamental intention of these precepts is to do no harm. A little louder. Okay. These precepts are basically to not kill, to not steal, to not engage in sexual misconduct or misconduct of the senses, or to engage in intoxication, which can cloud the mind. And there are formal ways that we take precepts together in different sanghas, that it's formal in different ways. In our tradition, ordination is precepts are a big part of ordaining. But there are also informal ways that we take precepts. And as we deepen into this path, I think it's important to recognize that there are ways that we can touch into these precepts in every moment, with every breath, especially this heartfelt intention to do no harm. Which can reflect in the way we walk, in the way we talk to a stranger, There are a lot of wild animals around here, turkeys and deer. Since I've been here yesterday, this trip, I've seen deer and turkeys a couple of times. Um, and Mike's cat, who I got to spend some time with last night. And I think that animals get it when we hold this intention to do no harm in our hearts. And I think that people get it too. And I think that we get it. And so there's a way that that can give us access to meaningful peace and quiet when we're sitting on the cushion. And I think in part that's because even a single thought can disrupt the clarity of a quiet heart. And so as we deepen our sensitivity to whether or not we're doing harm in the world, we gain ever deepening access to states that do no harm, which can be states of peace. It's a symbiosis, a mutual symbiosis between the precepts and samadhi. Because as we deepen our inner peace, we deepen that sensitivity to harm. And as we deepen that sensitivity, we move deeper into peace. And that can be a little scary, but I think it's a good thing. It can be a little scary to be so sensitive. We try to harden ourselves, as we move through the world because it feels safer. And this path is not a path of hardening. This is a path of softening. And so that can be a little scary. But I think that that an equanimity comes with it as well. So we become much more sensitive, but we also learn how to take a breath and let it go. I have a teacher, a friend who was a monastic for many years, who said that in the monastery, a raised eyebrow can be considered an act of aggression. That's pretty sensitive. But when I look at my own path, I cherish that sensitivity. Because when we have an opportunity like this, being in the Zendo, and that there's always this opportunity. But there are times when it's more explicit, like when we're sitting on a cushion, when we have this opportunity to be mindful of our breath. And we have cultivated a tender heart And that can be a really sacred thing. And I know that people talk about mindfulness of the breath. And I'm putting an emphasis on the word the, because I'd like to propose that a more meaningful replacement of that word would be mindfulness of this breath. Because it's not a conceptualization. We can conceptualize mindfulness of the breath. But as a concept, that's pretty meaningless. But if we're talking about mindfulness of this breath, the truth is that only one breath exists. This one. So we can breathe in this breath. We don't need to worry about whether or not we were mindful of the ones in the past. We don't need to worry about whether we'll be mindful of the ones in the future. Because the only breath that exists is this one. And it turns this moment into something truly beautiful. I was hearing that little brook while we were meditating. My hearing's not great as I get older, but I could hear it. And I had an experience that this breath passing through my lungs is every bit as vital, refreshing as that brook. Since we spend our entire lives breathing, we don't really notice that we're filled with life from our breath. But we know it's true because if we stop breathing, we don't last very long. So our life comes from that breath. It's just such a simple thing. It seems like in our lives as human beings, we find ourselves in complicated circumstances on a regular basis. Our heads get complicated, our relationships get complicated, our circumstances get complicated. And yet we always have this very, very simple thing to recommit to doing no harm, to recommit to being the kind of person that a deer outside will not be afraid of because it's so clear that we don't intend harm. And we have this opportunity to let that sensitivity that we cultivate in our hearts give us access to this moment, to this breath. I don't have any idea what our timing is. Does anybody? Okay. I'd love to tell a little story. I didn't want to get going on this story before I knew if there was time. So for this winter practice period, we're going to be studying the Shurangama Sutra, which is one of the Mahayana sutras that is primarily a discourse between Sakyamuni Buddha and Ananda, who is Buddha's cousin and student, and who is among the great Savaka Sangha, the Sangha of Sakyamuni Buddha's students. Ananda is kind of the one who just doesn't ever seem to get it. So Ananda is kind of the everyman, the one who we can all relate to. And the opening of the Shurangama Sutra, Shurangama, by the way, is a Sanskrit word that means, I think it's often translated as unbreakable or eternal. And it's talking about Shurangama Samadhi. So when we sit on the cushion and we cultivate that silent heart, that's distinct from Shurangama Samadhi because it's conditional. There's a condition of quiet. It's a wonderful condition, but it's also not something that we can realistically maintain all the time. Shurangama Samadhi is independent of circumstance. So that's what this sutra is about. It's about accessing Shurangama Samadhi, which is liberation. And in this story, the king, I was going to bring my copy of the sutra and I forgot it, so I don't remember the king's name. But he's celebrating I guess not celebrating, but it's the 1 year anniversary of his father's death. And so he's celebrating the life of his father and holding a banquet. He's invited the Buddha and all of the saints and sages, the members of the Savaka Sangha, the Bodhisattvas and Mahasattvas to this feast. And everybody is there except for Ananda. He's late to the feast. And the reason that he's late is because he's been on alms rounds, which is, monastics begging for food. Traditionally, Buddhists monastics don't cook. They only eat food that they've been gifted. And so he was on alms rounds, and he ended up coming to a brothel. And there's a young woman in this brothel, a young Matanga woman, who is deeply in love with Ananda. And she casts an enchantment. And they end up, Ananda is supposed to be at this feast with the Buddha. And they end up coming very close to Ananda breaking his vow of celibacy. And the Buddha witnesses this from afar. And he starts chanting the sutra, the Shurangama Sutra, and he calls on Manjushri, the wisest of the bodhisattvas, to go and get him. Before it's too late. And so, there's a little bit of I guess from our cultural perspective, a little bit of a prudishness to this sutra, like this sort of terror that he's going to, break this vow. But the underlying meaning here is that our precepts are worth all of our effort. And the Buddha proceeds to say in the sutra, Ananda, the reason that you came so close to breaking your precepts was that you don't have a deeply cultivated samadhi. So Ananda comes back with Manjushri to this feast, and that's actually where the sutra begins. That part is the prologue. But I just wanted to share it because this sutra is a roadmap. It's giving us a roadmap. And this is sort of the first step on this roadmap. The cultivation, really the cultivation of caring, allowing yourself to care ever more deeply. Because that gives you, I think that the preciousness of the capacity to be fully present in this moment, it doesn't come from what it gives us. It comes from what it allows us to let go of. So I personally am going to be retaking my precepts at the beginning of this winter practice period. And if anybody is called to explore precepts, I would invite you to do so. It's quite a path. And it doesn't even need to be specific precepts. It's just cultivating a heart that means no harm. And the courage to be in the world with a heart like that. And the equanimity to let go of the things that come at us in the world. So again, as I mentioned in the beginning, and I have a particular translation of the precepts that I really like because it's framed as training. A lot of the times precepts can be like, don't do this. And I find that sort of that approach to taking precepts can diminish the capacity to cultivate that loving heart. So I tend to like the precepts that have sort of a gentler translation, a gentler English translation. So this one, the first precept is, I undertake the training to refrain from intentionally taking life. The second one, I undertake the training to refrain from taking that which is not given. The third, I undertake the training to refrain from misuse of sexuality and the senses. The fourth, I undertake the training to refrain from speech that is false, divisive, harsh, and meaningless. And the fifth, I undertake the training to refrain from intoxication, which leads to carelessness. I think that's all I've got. um, and I don't know if timing's good. Is it good? So I think we can open it up to questions if anybody has any questions. It's pretty simple Dharma talk. And this is also for people online as well. Oh, yes. Yeah, this is actually a translation of Pali. So these are the five basic precepts as they come from sort of the original uh, Buddhist traditions. So these are translations from the very early suttas.
Yeah, and I've read them translated in different ways.
Yeah.
That's unique, so.
Oh, this particular translation? I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm not sure where it came from. Yeah.
Maybe we can ask AI.
Yeah. I mean, AI's here with us. Okay, yeah.
What if you were a Zen samurai? I take it you wouldn't be getting softer and softer.
Well, that one's a little bit out of my wheelhouse. I wouldn't say that it would be impossible. I have no idea.
Well, they were householders, they weren't monastic.
Yeah. And maybe it's possible to cultivate an intention to do no harm as a samurai. I have no idea. It's not my path. But I wouldn't I wouldn't say that it's not everybody's path. I don't know. But not very helpful. Let's in the back first.
I'm not a samurai, but I do kill things. I kill these things. This is stinky bog, which is very invasive around our sangha. And I work to incorporate this into my Buddhist practice in terms of balance of nature, but maybe you have a thought that could help me.
Absolutely. I think it's wonderful that you bring that up because as human beings, we absolutely can't avoid killing. We take this precept, but I think that every time we adjust our bodies, we're killing, bacteria. And maybe that touches a little bit more deeply on that Zen samurai. I can't say that I know an answer to that, but it does feel like there's something very deep and rich in the exploration of what harm actually is. Because to create rules and then judgments based on those rules, I think that's going to limit our capacity to engage in this practice in a heartfelt way. And I feel like there's a lot more there, and I'm not sure what it is, but I have a lot of curiosity. You had a question.
Yeah, I did. As a Buddhist who lives in the real world, and it's an interesting world right now that encourages a lot of competitivity in the tech industry around us. You might need to take someone else's job to get your paycheck. What's your perspective on that? Being a Buddhist in this era.
Yeah. I think it's probably important to note first that I think in all time in history since the beginning of Buddhism, it's been that sort of time. We've always lived in a world where it's a struggle to survive, especially if you're taking on the intention to not do harm. And I guess that what I would say, and this is something that each of us individually has to cultivate our own relationship with. So my version is not going to be yours. But I guess what I would say personally is that it's worth the effort. It's worth the effort to cultivate that heart. Even though the world, and like you said, in this time in the world right now, we live in a time when a lot of people who have gotten where they are through aggression and violence are given some amount of carte blanche to do harm in the world. And it can feel like we're a little bit helpless in the face of that very explicit uplifting of violence and harm. Like, this is the best way to be. And I think all I would say is it's worth it. It's really worth it to cultivate kindness. Maybe even more so in times like this. And, the Dalai Lama is famously quoted as saying that we are going to be selfish no matter what. But it's important to be intelligent about it. And I think that cultivating a loving heart is a very selfish thing to do because it results in a happy life. I have that as a personal experience. I'm not speaking hypothetically. Yeah. Maybe I'll see if anybody online. Yeah. Judy.
Hi, Jesse. There are probably a lot of newcomers there, and you use the word samadhi. Can you explain what samadhi is?
Absolutely. Thank you. Yes. In case you didn't hear the question, it was for people who may not know what. Can I explain what samadhi is? I can explain what samadhi is to me. I think it's different to everybody. Um, I think most simply for me, samadhi is a clear and quiet heart. In Pali, there's this word that is uh, used frequently. And now I'm forgetting what the word is. Give me a second. Huh. Never forget this word. No, it's the word for heart mind
Shin in Japanese.
in Japanese. Yeah, maybe I'll get it in a moment here, but the Gene probably remembers. Yeah.
Name called Shin.
Cheetah. Thank you. Yeah, cheetah. Um, I love that word cheetah because there isn't a translation for it in English. It's not mind. We talk about mindfulness in Buddhism. Um, but what we're talking about is citta, and citta is best translated, as far as I know, as heart mind. That these two things are one, and so mindfulness could also be translated as heartfulness. Um, and so for me, samadhi is citta, a clear, quiet heart mind. Yeah. I'd be curious if anybody else has thoughts on what samadhi is for you.
The root, sama, used in way in Sanskrit, sama means union, connection,
Mm.
non-separation. So it kind of fits with what you said. Sama means like, I think sometimes samadhi is sometimes translated as one-pointedness, being one with something, being non-separate. So that, which is basically what you were saying.
Yeah.
Heart connection.
Also equality.
Hmm?
Samadhi, sama, that word is also translated as equality. Equal.
Equal, yeah.
Yeah, oftentimes samadhi is spoken about in terms of gathering. Um, in Buddhism, we talk about outflows, which is like reaching out for those things outside of us that will make us happy, that we think will make us happy and never do. And samadhi is about gathering those outflows. That's another thing that teachers will talk about. Yes.
I think in Hindu religion, we talk about samadhi as stillness when you're meditating.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thank you. I'm saying hi to our friends. Oh, and AI. Hi, AI. Yeah.
Similar to what she was talking about, having to take someone's job in order to survive. What if you're on the receiving end of it? You're practicing Buddhism and you're trying to let go, do no harm, and realizing everyone has their own karma, and you have your own choice how you want to be
Mhm.
And if somebody still continues doing it and
Mhm.
you're at a disadvantage,
Mhm.
how do you cope up with that, especially in the costly environment we live in now?
Yeah, yeah, and to maybe extend it beyond the single example and just to look at how do we be with harm when it's perpetrated against us, right? Because if you are developing this sensitivity of heart, then it can be even more impactful, you know? So I don't know if anybody here knows of the teacher Pema Chodron. Beautiful, beautiful teacher in the Tibetan tradition, a student of Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche's. Um, she she has spoken really, really eloquently about what how it landed for me was the open, broken heart. There's a way that an open heart is going to be broken. It's inevitable. And I think that the question really is, are we going to let that heartbreak atrophy into something closed, clenched? You know, because we do have this response, and it's a meaningful and I think intelligent response to close up when we're hurt, right? Like to protect ourselves, to tense up. But I think that that can result in being trapped in that pain because we're holding on to it, even even in our intention to protect ourselves from it. So I think that this idea of an open, broken heart is about opening again and again and again, even when we're hurt. And in that way that it can turn from suffering to grief. The grief is still there, but it's not suffering because it has freedom. It's not stuck.
Koshu.
Mm.
I really appreciate this question because for me it brings up uh, harm, which we're interpreting as harm, right? It's our creation. Um, how it in plays kind of with not knowing.
Mm.
Like, we're talking about it in a certain way, like we've already put it in the box, common harm, and it's hurting. And what you might add, the possibility of freedom that you just mentioned with not knowing.
It comes back to the weeding, right? Like keeping our minds and hearts open about what harm is. Like we may not actually know what it is. And if we were to know like the full circumstances of the person who took our job, you know, if we were to fully experience their hearts, I think that's a really good point, you know, then we might not experience it as harm at all. You know, we might be like, oh my gosh, you really needed that job. I'm so glad you got it.
And the possibilities for us arise
Mm-hmm.
in that space.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Yes.
Question is there an effective form of striving or, striving for achievement for something you want or whatever, right? In the worldly sense, in the general, like, everyday sense, with non-attachment. In the sense that if you want to see things get done, if you have certain goals, right? Is there a way to do that? Because oftentimes, it's like people who are very aggressive or very like whatever. There's some fire within them, right? There's that attachment. Is there a sense in which we can be effective strivers while staying at peace.
Well, that's a good question. I think that, thank you. I think that that's, well, I think all of these questions are things that we could spend the rest of our lives reflecting on and always find new answers. So I think I wouldn't say that I know the answer. I think that I used to work in public education, and there was a lot of talk around high expectations of students, right? You have to have high expectations. And honestly, for me, that never really landed well. I think that one of the big things that exists in Buddhism is that we don't have high expectations in Buddhism. In fact, typically we try to cultivate not having any expectations at all. But I think that it's possible to not have high expectations and to have high aspirations. I think that as Buddhist practitioners, we're actually very ambitious in our efforts to cultivate a way of being. It's like, I can't remember who it was that said this, that the three things that you need for Zen practice are first, faith in the Buddha's awakening, that's a real thing. The second thing you need is doubt. You need doubt. And then you need like diligence in order to not be stopped by that doubt. So, personally, I think, yes, there's a wholesome way to strive with great intention and with no expectation. Yeah. Thank you. Okay, now we're at time. Thank you, everybody, so much. I'll be available if anybody has any other questions, afterwards, if you felt you didn't have a chance to ask questions. Thank you.
And every place with the true merit of Buddha's way, being silence, I vow to stay. Illusions are they lie and I'm a gaze of boundless. I will bow to this way is surpassable.